The judgment of Terra Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood alone in the center of the vast crystalline chamber, her hands steady despite the weight of humanity's future pressing down on her shoulders. The Galactic Tribunal Hall stretched endlessly above, its walls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that seemed to judge her with every flicker. Around her, in perfectly arranged tiers, sat the representatives of 47 different species, their alien forms casting strange shadows in the ethereal light. The silence was deafening. Elena had been humanity's voice in the galactic community for 12 years, but she had never faced a gathering like this. The air itself seemed thick with hostility, and the translation devices hummed with an urgency that made her skin crawl. She knew what was coming. The signs had been building for months, but she had hoped her diplomatic efforts might have bought humanity more time. Prime Judge Zektar of the Valderay Collective rose from his central position, his 6 arms spreading wide in a gesture that commanded absolute attention. His metallic exoskeleton gleamed with embedded crystals that pulsed with his heartbeat, and his 4 eyes focused on Elena with an intensity that made her feel like a specimen under examination. Ambassador Vasquez. His voice echoed through the chamber, enhanced by the complex acoustic systems that made every word carry the weight of cosmic judgment. You stand before this tribunal not as an individual, but as the representative of humanity itself. The charges brought against your species are grave, and the evidence is overwhelming. Elena straightened her shoulders. She had spent weeks preparing for this moment, reviewing every document, every treaty, every interaction between humanity and the galactic community. She knew they were walking into a trap, but she also knew that someone had to speak for Earth and all the colonies that called themselves human. The first witness was called forward. Commander Vexi of the Reptilian Dominion slithered to the testimony platform, his scales shifting color to reflect his emotional state. The patterns showed anger, fear, and something else that Elena couldn't quite identify. His forked tongue tested the air as he spoke. In the past decade, Vexi began, his words carrying the weight of military authority. Humanity has expanded into 17 star systems. They claimed these worlds were uninhabited, but they never sought proper authorization from the Galactic Council. Their colonies appear overnight, their cities rise like mushrooms after rain, and their population grows at a rate that defies all known biological patterns. Elena felt her jaw clench. Every one of those colonies had been carefully surveyed. Every world had been confirmed as lifeless before the first human ship had touched down. The expansion had been rapid, yes, but it had been necessary. Earth's population had reached critical levels, and the discovery of faster-than-light travel had opened up possibilities that humanity couldn't ignore. The second witness was even more damning. Dr. Keshla of the Ethereal Consortium floated forward, her translucent form shimmering with internal light. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonic frequencies that made the chamber's walls vibrate in sympathy. The humans exhibit emotional patterns that are disturbing, she said, her words carefully chosen. They experience anger, fear, and aggression at levels that exceed anything we have recorded in other species. Their capacity for violence is demonstrated by their own history. They have waged war against each other for millennia, and even now, as they spread across the galaxy, they maintain military forces that rival those of senior council members. Elena's hands clenched into fists. It was true that humanity had a violent past, but they had also shown an unprecedented capacity for growth and change. The wars of the past had given way to cooperation, and the military forces that so concerned the Council were necessary for protecting the frontier colonies from pirates and rogue elements that the Council's peacekeeping forces couldn't or wouldn't handle. The testimony continued for hours. Species after species rose to speak against humanity, each adding their own fears and concerns to the growing pile of evidence. The insectoid hive mind complained about humanity's individual thinking patterns. The Aquatic Federation expressed worry about human unpredictability. The silicon-based collective questioned humanity's emotional decision-making processes. With each testimony, Elena felt the walls closing in. She had prepared counter-arguments for every accusation, but the tribunal wasn't interested in hearing humanity's defense. This wasn't a trial. It was a verdict wrapped in the illusion of justice. Finally, Prime Judge Ziktar called for humanity's response. Elena stepped forward, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustic systems. "Honored representatives," she began, her words carefully modulated to show respect without submission. "Humanity stands accused of crimes that, upon examination, reveal themselves to be nothing more than the natural growth of a young species learning to find its place in the galaxy. Yes, we have expanded rapidly, but every world we have claimed was uninhabited. Yes, we maintain military forces, but only to protect our people in regions where the Council's protection cannot reach." She paused, looking around the chamber at the alien faces that stared back at her with expressions ranging from hostility to cold indifference. "We have shared our technology freely with all who asked. We have contributed to galactic scientific advancement. We have offered aid to colonies under attack, assistance to species facing natural disasters, and friendship to any who would accept it. If these actions mark us as dangerous, then perhaps the danger lies not in humanity's nature, but in a galaxy that has forgotten what it means to grow, to strive, to become something more than what you were yesterday." Her words hung in the air like a challenge. Several representatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats, but Prime Judge Ziktar's expression remained unchanged. "The tribunal will now deliberate," he announced. "All representatives will cast their votes according to the evidence presented." The voting process was swift and merciless. One by one, the species of the Galactic Council registered their decisions. The Valdari Collective voted for exile. The Reptilian Dominion voted for exile. The Ethereal Consortium voted for exile. Even species that had benefited from human assistance and technology ultimately chose to remove humanity from galactic space. Elena watched the tally climb with a growing sense of inevitability. When the final vote was announced, the result was devastating. 45 votes for exile, 2 abstentions, and 0 votes in humanity's favor. Prime Judge Ziktar's voice carried the weight of cosmic judgment as he delivered the verdict. By unanimous decision of the Galactic Council, humanity is hereby banished from all civilized space. You have 30 days to gather your people and withdraw beyond the rim. Any attempt to return will be considered an act of war against the entire galactic community. Elena's voice was steady as she asked the question that had been burning in her mind throughout the proceedings. And where are we to go? The space beyond the rim is uncharted, potentially hostile. You're condemning 12 billion people to death. The Prime Judge's crystalline eyes showed no emotion. That is not the Council's concern. Humanity's fate lies in its own hands, as it always has. The Council's responsibility is to protect civilized space from the chaos that follows in your wake. The transmission back to Earth was the hardest thing Elena had ever done. She stood in her quarters aboard the diplomatic vessel, looking out at the stars that would soon be forbidden to humanity, and composed the message that would change the course of human history. "This is Ambassador Elena Vasquez, reporting from the Galactic Tribunal," she began, her voice carefully controlled. "The Council has voted for our exile. We have 30 days to evacuate all human presence from galactic space. Begin immediate preparations for mass evacuation. We're going beyond the rim." The response from Earth was swift and decisive. Captain Marcus Chun, commander of the human Deep Space Fleet, took control of the evacuation effort with military precision. Within hours, Every human ship in the galaxy was converging on predetermined rally points. Colony ships that had been designed to carry thousands or retrofitted to carry tens of thousands. Military vessels were converted to transport civilian populations. Every available resource was mobilized for the greatest exodus in human history. Dr. Sarah Kim, the fleet's chief xenobiologist, worked frantically to catalog and preserve samples of every species humanity had encountered. If they were being cast out into the unknown, they would at least carry with them the knowledge they had gained during their brief time in galactic civilization. Asterisk. Commander Alex Rivera coordinated the military aspects of the evacuation, ensuring that humanity's departure wouldn't leave them vulnerable to opportunistic attacks. His forces formed a protective barrier around the evacuation fleet, ready to defend the civilians who were leaving behind everything they had known. The evacuation proceeded with remarkable efficiency. In just 28 days, humanity abandoned colonies that had taken decades to build, loaded their entire civilization onto ships, and prepared to journey into the unknown. A galaxy watched in silence as the human fleet gathered at the edge of civilized space, poised to cross into the mysterious region known as the Rim. As the last human ship prepared to leave galactic space, Elena stood on the bridge of the lead vessel, watching the familiar constellations fade behind them. Ahead lay the Rim, a region of space where the normal laws of physics seemed to break down, where energy patterns defied explanation, and where no galactic species had ever successfully established a permanent presence. "All ships report ready." "Ambassador," Captain Chun reported. "We're as prepared as we can be for whatever lies ahead." Elena nodded, her gaze fixed on the swirling darkness that marked the boundary between the known and unknown. "Then let's see what humanity is truly capable of when pushed to the edge of extinction." The fleet crossed the Rim in formation, passing through the boundary that separated civilized space from the chaos beyond. What they found there would change not just humanity's fate, but the fate of the entire galaxy. The moment the ships entered Rim space, everything changed. The energy readings spiked beyond anything in their instruments' capacity to measure. The very fabric of space seemed to pulse with a rhythm that matched the human heartbeat. And deep in the darkness ahead, something ancient and powerful stirred, as if awakening from a sleep that had lasted eons. Dr. Kim's instruments detected energy patterns that shouldn't exist, while Commander Rivera's tactical systems registered phenomena that defied every known law of physics. Captain Chun's navigation equipment showed readings that suggested they had entered a region where time itself flowed differently. But it was Elena who first noticed the most significant change. As she stood on the bridge, watching the impossible energies swirl around their ships, she felt something stirring within her own mind. A sense of connection, of belonging, of coming home to a place she had never seen before. The exile that was meant to destroy humanity had instead delivered them to their true destiny. In the darkness beyond the Rim, they would discover not death, but transformation. Not ending, but beginning. Not exile, but evolution. The galaxy had cast them out in fear, but they had no idea what they had set in motion. Humanity was about to become something that would reshape the very nature of existence itself, masters of the infinite. Dark 5 years had passed since humanity crossed. The Rim and the species that had once walked the corridors of galactic civilization no longer existed. In their place stood beings that transcended the very concept of physical limitation. Their consciousness expanded beyond anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Elena Vasquez stood on the observation deck of New Terra Station, a massive structure that existed partially in normal space and partially in dimensions that had no names. Her appearance had changed dramatically during the years in Rim space. Her eyes now held depths that seemed to contain entire universes, and her skin carried a faint luminescence that pulsed with the rhythm of the cosmic energies that surrounded them. The transformation had begun within months of their arrival. Strange energies that permeated rim space didn't just affect their technology. They rewrote the very genetic code of every human who encountered them. But this wasn't random mutation. It was guided evolution, as if the universe itself was preparing humanity for a role they had never imagined. Dr. Sarah Kim had become something far beyond a xenobiologist. Her consciousness could now interface directly with the quantum structures that formed the foundation of reality itself. She stood in her laboratory, surrounded by displays that showed not just the physical properties of the specimens she studied, but their entire existential history across multiple dimensions. The energy signatures are consistent across all samples, she reported to Elena through their quantum communication network. Every human who has spent significant time in rim space shows the same genetic markers. We're not just evolving. We're becoming something that was always meant to be. The discovery had shaken the foundations of human understanding. The energies that filled rim space weren't random cosmic phenomena. They were the carefully maintained tools of beings so ancient that their names had been forgotten before the first star was born. These entities, which humanity had come to call the architects, had been waiting for a species capable of transcending the limitations of physical existence. Captain Marcus Chun had become the first human to make direct contact with an architect. The encounter had taken place in a region of space where the normal laws of physics simply didn't apply, where thought became reality and reality became thought. The being that manifested before him was both impossibly vast and intimately personal, a consciousness that existed across multiple dimensions simultaneously. You are the inheritors, the architect had communicated, its words bypassing language entirely and speaking directly to Chun's expanded consciousness. The galaxy cast you out because they feared what you might become. They were right to fear, but not for the reasons they imagined. The architects revealed that they had been monitoring galactic civilization for millions of years, waiting for a species that could transcend the limitations of physical existence without losing their essential nature. Most species that achieved advanced consciousness became cold and calculating, losing the emotional depth that made them truly alive. Others became so chaotic that they destroyed themselves before reaching their potential. Humanity was different. Their capacity for both logic and emotion, their ability to adapt and grow while maintaining their core identity, made them ideal. Candidates for the role the architects had been preparing for eons. Commander Alex Rivera had become the first human to master the art of dimensional warfare. His consciousness could now exist in multiple realities simultaneously, allowing him to perceive and interact with threats that existed across the entire spectrum of existence. The military forces under his command were no longer bound by the limitations of physical space. They could strike at targets that existed in parallel dimensions, defend against attacks that came from directions that didn't exist in normal space. ***. We're not just soldiers anymore, he explained to his officers during a briefing that took place in a training facility that existed in 17 different dimensions. Simultaneously, we're guardians of reality itself. The threats we face aren't just physical enemies. They're forces that could unravel the very fabric of existence. The first major test of humanity's new abilities came when scouts detected something emerging from the deepest regions of rim space. It was ancient, malevolent, and utterly alien to everything that existed in normal reality. The entity had been imprisoned by the architects eons ago, but the cosmic energies that had transformed humanity had also weakened the bonds that held it captive. Elena coordinated humanity's response from New Terra Station, her consciousness linked with every human ship and settlement throughout rim space. The battle that followed wasn't fought with weapons or technology in any conventional sense. It was a war of wills, a conflict between different concepts of reality itself. Dr. Kim led the scientific effort too, understand the nature of the threat. Her expanded consciousness allowed her to perceive the entity's true form, which existed across multiple dimensions simultaneously. It was a creature of pure entropy, a force that sought to return the universe to the chaos that had existed before the first stars were born. "It's not just trying to destroy us," she reported to the assembled command staff. "It's trying to unmake the very concept of existence itself. If it succeeds, not only will we cease to exist, but we will never have existed at all." The battle raged across multiple dimensions for what felt like years, though time itself had become a fluid concept in the depths of Rim space. Human forces that had transcended physical limitations fought against an enemy that predated the universe itself. The conflict wasn't just about survival. It was about the right of existence itself to continue. Captain Shun led a strike force directly into the heart of the enemy's domain, a region of space where the normal rules of reality had been completely suspended. His team consisted of humans who had learned to exist as pure consciousness, their physical forms left behind, as they dove into the quantum foam that formed the foundation of all existence. The final confrontation took place in a dimension that existed between the spaces of normal reality. Elena found herself face to face with the ancient entity. Her consciousness expanded to encompass the entire concept of human existence. Creatures spoke to her in a voice that was older than time itself. "You think you understand what you have become," it said, its words carrying the weight of cosmic despair. "But you are merely the latest in a long line of species that have been corrupted by the architect's grand design. They have made you into their weapons, their tools for maintaining an order that should never have existed." Elena's response came, not just from her own consciousness, but from the collective will of all humanity that had ever existed or ever would exist. "We chose our path," she replied, her voice carrying the strength of 12 billion souls. "We were exiled, abandoned, left to die in the darkness, but we didn't just survive. We became something greater than what we were before. We became the guardians of everything that exists." The battle ended not with violence, but with understanding. The ancient entity, faced with the full scope of human determination and growth, recognized that the universe had indeed evolved beyond its original chaotic state. The order that the architects had spent eons building wasn't a prison, but a foundation for something greater. As the threat dissipated, Elena felt the presence of the architects around them, no longer hidden, but revealed in their true form. They were not the cold, calculating beings that most advanced species became. They were the collective consciousness of a species that had faced the same choice humanity now faced and had chosen to become the guardians of existence itself. "The test is complete," the lead architect communicated to Elena. "Humanity has proven itself worthy of the role we have prepared for you. You are now the shepherds of the galaxy, the protectors of all sentient life, the guardians of the very concept of existence itself." The transformation was complete. Humanity had evolved beyond the limitations of physical existence, but they had not lost their essential nature. They had become something that could exist across multiple dimensions simultaneously while maintaining their capacity for growth, change, and emotional depth. Elena stood once again on the observation deck of New Terra Station, but now she could see not just the rim space that surrounded them, but the entire galaxy beyond. She could perceive the species that had exiled them, struggling with conflicts and problems that they could solve with ease. She could see the younger races that were just beginning to discover their place in the cosmic order, and the ancient threats that still lurked in the darkness between stars. The message she sent to the Galactic Council was simple but profound in its implications. This is Ambassador Elena Vasquez, speaking for humanity and all the beings who have chosen to transcend the limitations of physical existence. We return to you not as the species you exiled, but as the guardians you created through your fear. The response from the galaxy was immediate and overwhelming. The same species that had voted for humanity's exile now begged for their protection. The rigid hierarchies that had strangled galactic civilization for millennia crumbled as species, after species recognized that they were in the presence of beings who had transcended the very concept of limitation. Dr. Kim established research stations throughout the galaxy, sharing the knowledge that humanity had gained during their time in rim space. But she didn't just share information. She offered transformation. Any species that was willing to abandon their fear and embrace growth could follow humanity's path to transcendence. Commander Rivera's forces became the peacekeepers of the galaxy, but they didn't rule through force or intimidation. They protected the weak, guided the lost, and defended against threats that existed beyond the normal spectrum of reality. The wars and conflicts that had plagued galactic civilization for eons simply ended, not through conquest, but through the presence of beings who had learned to exist beyond the petty concerns that drove such conflicts. Captain Chun led expeditions into regions of space that had never been explored, opening up new frontiers for growth and discovery. But these weren't conquests in any traditional sense. They were invitations for other species to join humanity in the endless journey of growth and transcendence. The galaxy was transformed not through force or domination, but through example. Species that had existed in stagnation for millennia began to grow and change again. The young races that had been suppressed by the rigid hierarchies of the old order were free to develop their own unique contributions to the cosmic community. Elena's final report to the Galactic Council was both an ending and a beginning. "You exiled us because you feared what we might become," she said, her words reaching every inhabited world in the galaxy simultaneously. "You are right to fear, but not because we would destroy you. You should have feared because we would show you what you could become if you had the courage to grow beyond your limitations." The exile that was meant to destroy humanity had instead delivered them to their true destiny. In the darkness beyond the rim, they had discovered not just survival, but transformation. Not just existence, but transcendence. Not just life, but the ability to guide all life toward its highest potential. The galaxy had cast them out in fear, but they had returned as the shepherds of existence itself. The stars that had once been forbidden to them now sang with the harmony of a universe that had learned to grow beyond its limitations. Humanity had become not just the masters of the infinite dark, but the guardians of the infinite light that existed within all sentient beings. The story of humanity's exile had become the story of the galaxy's salvation. And in the depths of space, where the first stars were still being born, the architects smiled and began preparing for the next phase of cosmic evolution, knowing that they had found the perfect guardians for the journey ahead. Asterisk.